Greetings, everyone. This is Light of Tabor. I'm your host, Mark Rattel. And today we have a very special guest. We have Joshua Zatkoff, and he is a evangelist and soon-to-be author. And we're going to be talking a little bit about a brief summary of his testimony, how he came to Christ, and kind of somewhat coming back to orthodoxy in a sense, and just talking about where he's at in his spiritual journey. And he also has a background coming from psychedelics, which is very similar to my background, as I engaged in Kundalini yoga and a lot of psychedelic ceremony before finding my way to Holy Orthodoxy ultimately. So I thought it would be really cool to bring him on and let him speak. And yeah, I'll hand it over to you. I just wanted to I usually start off with guests. I ask them, how did you originally come to Christ? Like, what was your walk with Christ like originally? Like, were you raised in a Christian household? I know you mentioned you were baptized Orthodox Christian. I don't know if you were baptized as an infant or a child, or how that all worked out. Maybe you want to go into details on that, just to kind of give people some background.
Yeah, so my name is Josh, and first off, I just appreciate you having me, Mark. And I was looking forward to
Yeah.
this conversation and just seeing where it goes and where God takes it. But yeah, I was born into a family that where both of my parents were present. My dad was raised Russian Orthodox, and so he was raised into that. My mom, I think, was raised Catholic, but she wasn't really even raised Catholic. She just, was just Catholic. Like, that's kind of how it is for a lot of people are just born into the tradition of the religion rather than actually, being raised in the religion, if that makes sense. And
Yeah, no, it totally does.
yeah, they didn't practice it. And so my dad, he was raised Russian Orthodox. And so my mom converted to Russian Orthodoxy when they got married. And so growing up, my dad, took us to a Russian Orthodox church. And we would go to services and stuff, and I was
Would you
baptized.
go? Would you say you'd go like every Sunday, like once a week?
Yeah, we were going to like Sunday services. But
Okay.
what's really interesting is I mean, I was a kid, but I don't remember it being a divine liturgy. Like I don't remember that aspect of it. Now, when I would go and visit my grandma in Pennsylvania, she had a Russian Orthodox church that she would take us to, and that one was, now looking back, like I didn't realize how beautiful that church was, and how, I mean, it was massive, just like the most beautiful murals I've ever seen in my life. Like, I mean, beautiful church. But so I was raised, going to church on Sundays, and when I was about probably 11 or 12, once I could stay home alone and like, not go wherever my parents went, I just kind of stopped going. And my dad didn't press it on us. It was like you say the Lord's Prayer at bedtime.
Right.
And that was the extent of being raised Orthodox, if so.
Yeah, no, totally. That makes sense. I mean, because there is a lot of people like cradle Orthodox. Some people are raised in the faith, but I I've some of them are really really faithful, but there is some that can that tend to like not be as practicing. They don't practice as much as some people that may have converted and come over, and they're really like very kind of gung ho and zealous about the faith. I've noticed some differences there. Not like 100%, but everybody's individual case can be unique. But yeah, I wanted
Yeah.
to delve into like your background coming into like how'd you get into psychedelics, and maybe just like a brief overview of your testimony in regards to that, and how you found your way to Christianity through that, and just how you navigated that, because it's I know how that can be interesting.
Yeah, I was excited when I heard that you kind of had a background in psychedelics, because even though it's a very common thing, it's not a common thing to meet people that were into that come into Christianity. Like, I could say there's
Right.
probably like a handful of people I met that really got into psychedelics that I know that are personally that are Christians now. So it's always kind of exciting when I can relate that to that with somebody. But yeah, for me, I started smoking weed when I was 12 years old, and it was
Same
very
same
like
year,
spread
same
out.
age for me.
Yeah, and so I
Yeah.
mean, I got into everything really early, and looking back, I have a girl now, and it blows my mind. It's really strange to think like what I was involved in at that age. And so I started getting into all pretty early on, and when I was 15 years old, at that point, by the time I was 15, I was a sophomore and completely addicted to weed. As far as like, I had to smoke every moment of every day that I could. I was skipping school to smoke. Like, it's just, that was all I cared about, was weed. And when I was 15 years old, I had a friend that had some mushrooms, and So, he gave me these mushrooms. I think I ate about an eighth of them. And remember, we went to the top of a mountain, and Bora Mountain. It's like one of the highest places in my county. And we're up there, and I spent essentially 6 hours in a car staring at the CD. You know how they used to have those old pop-in CD things, and it'd have images and like little dancing things, where like spent six
Yeah.
hours just staring at this thing and obviously talking, doing other things. But the fact I was so infatuated with just this CD player, um, and I remember this whole new world opened up to me. And it was kind of like how my first time with experience with weed was, except this was like 50 times more intriguing. And I remember having new thoughts. I remember feeling like I was one with everything in the universe. I remember laughing till my cheeks hurt. I remember just like so many things where I was like, this is life. Like, this is what I've been missing out on. Like, this is everything. And there was some scary moments to that, where I remember at one point I get out the car, I was like, I spent this whole time in the car, let me get outside and see kind of what's going on out here. And I started to climb up a radio tower, and it's like I'm 20 feet up, and now I'm like, now I got to get scared. I'm like, wait, what are you doing? And and then I
Right.
started to think about the headless horseman, because I was in the woods. I don't know why. And then I started to hear horses, so it showed me
Yeah.
like how powerful just my mind is. And I knew I was hallucinating with that aspect of it. But anyways, that was, it marked me. I mean, that was like something that changed my life. And then I went away to a rehab when I was actually like a month after that. Like a month after that, I went away to a year-long inpatient rehab. And over there, I was surrounded by people that were like heroin addicts, and I'm coming there like just smoking weed, doing a couple things I tried. But I was a kid, I was 15, and I'm around these like 17, about to be 18-year-old guys that are heroin addicts and smoking meth and this. And so I'm hearing all these war stories, and me being young, it just piqued my interest. It didn't scare me from it. Like, it was like, that sounds even more cool. And so when I,
Right.
when I came home, I get my first legal trouble, and now I'm on probation, so I can't smoke. And so I had a friend that we were on house arrest together, but it was a unmonitored house arrest, so I didn't have an ankle monitor.
Right.
They just expected my parents to keep me home. And so I would go to his house every day. And one day I was there, and he had some pills, so he had want to try and snort these pills. And I know I'm getting into other things. I'm just kind of giving a breakdown of
Yeah.
like
No.
the history of substances in my life. And we
Of
snorted
course.
these
Yeah.
pills. And I remember just that was the next like crux of my evolution into addiction. Was like, it was weed, then it was mushrooms, and then it was this pill and the opiates, and that's what changed everything. That was what grabbed me by the nuts, really. I mean. And
Yeah.
the thing is with the psychedelics, that was always my spiritual go-to, right? Like, so after the first time with mushrooms, I knew the spiritual world was open. Like, it was real. I
Right.
knew that there was something
Yeah.
there, even though I didn't have any encounters at that point. But you could just like feel one with a lot, like God, or that's how I thought at the time. If I felt like when I breathed, the universe would breathe, and I wanted to hug the whole world. And like, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
whenever, at that point, I wasn't thinking about God, Christianity at all. It was like, this is where it's at. And then think about it, all
Right.
your favorite, all the idolized musicians and all that, they're all doing psychedelics. So, the
Yeah.
Doors and Jimi
Jim
Hendrix and all
Morrison.
these
Yeah.
guys.
100%.
Yeah, like that was what I looked up to. And
Yeah.
so they're all into this, and I'm like, oh, this is how they got creative. Like, that was my thought, was I was an artist back then. I had artistic tendencies.
Yeah.
And so
Same.
for me, it was like, do the heroin to get high and enjoy life and numb myself, and then do psychedelics to find God and to evolve and to grow as a person. And so that was kind of where my psychedelic journey began, as far as it was my spiritual outlet. It wasn't I mean, I used it recreationally, but
Right.
ultimately that was God to me. Like, that's how you. And so.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. No, I came into the mushrooms at a young age too, and from weed, of course, and like, and then I started thinking. Later on, I started coming back to the mushrooms and the psychedelics from a more serious standpoint. I was getting into yoga, and it was like I was having these spiritual experiences that took me from being an atheist and an agnostic to like, okay, there's something out there. I tapped into something here. I had a spiritual experience. So I know there's something beyond this world. And then coming back to mushrooms, and I started hearing about, like, I started thinking that the mushrooms were the actual Eucharist, like the hidden Eucharist, Lord have mercy. But that's what I was thinking, and there was books written on this, and that was kind of the way I was looking for the original Christian church. What I was looking for. I was looking for, like, I was like, something's missing here. I knew something was off. I was like, Roman Catholicism. I grew up Roman Catholic. I was like, something's missing here in this church, and I was just like looking for. I feel like there's a missing church or a missing piece to the puzzle, and really, I think I was looking for orthodoxy that whole time, and so it kind of clicked when I found that. But I wanted to get
Wow.
into, like, how did you end up coming back to Christianity from that point, like where you were deep into psychedelic use and smoking weed regular. How did you? Because you said you that wasn't on your mind at all. At what point did you start navigating your way back to Christianity in some form of way?
Yeah. So this went on for years, you know. So from 2000 like uh 12 or 2000 like 10 to 2017 was basically just a long, deep, dark mess of, you know, suicide attempts, self-harm, addiction, overdoses multiple times, psych wards a couple of times. I mean, just a mess, right? And so by 2017, I did an 18-month prison, or I was in jail in it, but I had DOC time in 2015. So I get out in 2016. I'm trying to change my life. I'm making some progress, right? And I'm like, I finally get a job. I finally get like my restricted license after like 4 years or 3 years or whatever, not having one. I get a basement apartment. Like I'm making these, you know, moves forward in my life and trying, you know, and I'm I could feel myself like I'm drowning soon. Like I knew it was, you know, I'm like, I could just feel it. Like it felt like the whole world was like contending against me. Like it was so weird. And at that point I was actually going to church, and I was going to a Pentecostal church, and I remember I was trying to like get to know God, but nothing was happening. Like I wasn't experiencing anything. The church, like, you know, the church aesthetic was just very like, it wasn't intriguing to me. It was kind of like I just felt like I didn't fit in at all. I was like, man, this is just not my place, but I need God. I don't know how to find him. And
Right.
I'll never forget, I read the Bible one night. I read First Samuel, and that was the first time in my life that I read the Bible and actually like came to life, where I'm reading it and I was like, dude, this is a crazy story. And I knew it was real. Like I didn't need somebody, like I knew in my heart, I was like, dude, this really happened. Like they're talking about, you know, carrying the Ark of the Covenant away, and it's fun, you know, it's like all this crazy stuff happened, and David and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is an intense story. You know, this is a pretty cool book. I never knew this had stuff like this in there. And so I remember that one night, it felt like God did kind of touch me. And after that, I started to convicted about, because I was on Suboxone for my heroin addiction at the time, but I was injecting it. You know, I was using a needle because I was addicted to the needle as much as the drug. And so
Wow.
in my mind, that wasn't wrong. You know, in my mind, me taking Suboxone, whether it was through, you know, needle or not, me just taking Suboxone and smoking weed a little bit and taking psychedelics when I could find them, that was really good, you know, in my from my perspective, right? And so what started to happen is I started to get convicted about doing the my Suboxone that way. And that was, I didn't know what conviction was. I just one day was like, why do I feel bad about this? You know, I'm like, "Well, I feel like I can't be doing this anymore." And then I was, you know, had this girlfriend that I was sleeping with, and I would feel the same way. And I'm like, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this. And again, I had no idea this is even God. I'm like, what is going on? Why am I feeling bad about these things? Like I'm, you know, and so next thing I know, within the course of 2, 3 weeks, I lose my basement apartment. I total my car. You know, it was a bad accident. Dude hit me going probably 60, 70 miles an hour, T-boned me, my car
Oh
bent in
man.
half, carried me into the intersection. I mean, it was pretty bad, and I walked away without a scratch. I think a sore neck. You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah,
Glory to
like my
God, man.
passenger side door was in my driver's seat, like it, you know, like, and
Woo.
that was
That's
pretty
intense.
intense. That, yeah, and so back, obviously, you see God's hand, but at the time, I'm like, all right, like God hates me. He's trying to kill me. That's what I
Right,
felt.
right.
you know,
I know that feeling though too.
yeah. So it's like everything's falling apart. And so next thing I know, I'm homeless.
Yeah,
And now I'm homeless. And now I'm like, going through this stuff. And I'm losing my hope. At this point, I'm like, now I get why people end up on the street corner with a sign. I always judged them, not in a malicious way, but you think, subconsciously at least, this person failed. Like they did something wrong to end up like, how do you end up that bad off? Now I
right.
find out it's not very hard. All it takes is a pissed off landlord, not a
Yep.
check coming in, and no support at that point, and that's it. And so that's what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I found myself homeless, and at this point it was like it kind of spiraled out of control in the sense that I had a job and I started like doing crack and things I never did. Like I started just doing anything. I just didn't really care.
Yeah,
Um, and so I had
I've
a
been
couple
there.
overdoses. Yeah, yeah, you just lose hope, right? It's like when you fall into that place of despair, it's like
Yeah,
anything goes. And so
exactly.
that's where I found myself. And I had like a couple spiritual experiences. I may won't get into that right now, but a couple of spiritual experiences where I started to realize like God really is real, and I started to actually believe in Jesus, which was weird. It was like I was rapping at the time, and I like heard some old songs where I'd be like, yeah, Jesus something, and I'd say like, yeah, Jesus, I'd rap about Jesus, but I had no relationship with him, no like knowledge. Like it was really weird how I was starting to profess Jesus, even though I didn't know God at all, and I wasn't living a God lifestyle by any means. And um, so what happened was in October 28th, 2017, I had an overdose on heroin. And at this point, when I overdosed, I knew I was going to overdose, and I just didn't care. Like the amount I was going to do, I had been off it for 3 months. I was just doing other things, and so I knew my tolerance had dropped. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like looking at this needle and this bag and this everything, right? And I said, I got humbled, right? And I said, God, what do you want from me? I said, this is all I know. And like, I'm like, choking up in my throat. And it's like this is all I know. God. Like, what do you expect from me? Like, I was like, I did church for this year. I called on your name. I said the Lord's Prayer. I said the sinner prayer. I did all the stuff that everyone told me to do. I said I would I would be on the way to get drugs. I'd beg you to stop me. I'd beg you to help me. Like, this isn't what I want. I said, so what do you expect? This is all I know. For the last 12 years, this is all I know, and I'm tired of it. And so I said, sorry, forgive me. And then I said the Father while I'm cooking the stuff and the spoon, putting my tourniquet on, I'm putting the new, and I'm saying, Lord, forgive me, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. And I push the plunger and I wake up in an ambulance. Or actually I knew I was going out. So I jump up and said, run, like get out the room and try to keep yourself, moving. So I didn't fall
Moving.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I run, and next thing I know, I remember opening the door to the hotel, and then next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance. And the other thing that's interesting that I never even share typically, but one thing that was interesting is that someone called the ambulance and they had no idea who. Like they're like, we have no idea who called the ambulance. Like someone said they saw you on the third floor, just lay it out in the hallway. We don't even know who called. They're not here. And I go to the jail and I find out that actually 5 people overdosed that night, and it was me and one other person were the only ones that survived. So they were like, look, there's something going around and whatever. But at that point I was broken. I found myself in the holding cell, and for 5 days I'm going through severe like withdrawal and detox. And I'm crying out to God, like begging him, I'm done. Like I destroyed my life. I really destroyed my life. And so I just was calling on him to help and, show up. And I'm like, if you come and like that prayer, if you come and help me, I'll serve you. Except the thing is,
Yeah.
this
No,
time I
I've
really
said it.
meant it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And help me get out of this. I'll never do it again. And so I said that. But this time in my heart, I said, God, I don't even want to sleep with girls. Like I said, I don't care about nothing. Like I don't want anything. I just want to be a good boy. That was what I said. And so over the course, I'm in this Christian faith-based program in the jail. And so they're reading the Bible. They having speakers come in. The people there, for the most part, are like trying to better their lives. Not like everyone there is just talking about, dumb things and stuff. And so I got surrounded in this environment where I just felt like God was telling me to, something outside of myself that was within my heart was like telling me, just try, like, just like, what do you have to lose? Like, this is, you've never done this really, right? And so I started to read the Bible. I started to pray. I'm starting to do all this stuff, and I'm serious. My heart's in it. And next thing I know, like 3 weeks later, like stuff is just changing. Like my thoughts are changing, my mind's changing. I'm feeling this
Mm-hmm.
overwhelming love. Like when the Bible talks about it, in Ezekiel, God giving you a new heart of flesh. Like I remember one night genuinely feeling like He was giving me a new heart. Like it hurt. It felt like something was yanking my heart out of my chest and putting a new. Like I could feel my
Like
heart like
spiritual
spinning.
surgery,
It was
right?
crazy. Yeah, I really like hurt almost. Yeah, and I'm like, what the heck? I'm having a heart attack. What is, and I'm just getting just blasted with God's love. I'm getting like tangible stuff was happening. Like I'm, and it's like this addict mentality was still there. So it's like I'm viewing prayer as a drug at that point because God was rewarding me. It was like I would pray and I'd feel like joy and love, and I'd be like laughing, like the
Mm-hmm.
way you laugh on psychedelics. That's what I would be laughing like that every time I prayed. So now I want to pray all day. Now I want to read the Bible all day. You know what I mean? Because I was
Like a
getting
holy
met there.
addiction, yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was, and so that's basically what happened, and I miraculously get out. I was probably supposed to be there at least a year or two, but I was there a couple months, and then I got on for an opportunity to do a rehab. So they're like, if you do a bed-to-bed transfer, you're still in bond, do this rehab, and then court, and then come back to court. So I had that opportunity, and that was, I mean, that alone was another miracle that God worked, and everything changed. I mean, that was the turning point. So at that point, I'm
Right.
fully on fire for God, and I go straight into like, I go back to Pentecostal church and preaching the gospel on the street. I'm praying for the sick and laying hands and doing the Pentecostal thing, and I'm on fire for God, and that's kind of the turning point.
Glory to God. Nice, nice.
Glory to God.
So, and also, I remember in one of your interviews, you talking about light beings. I don't know if that was one of the
Mhm.
spiritual experiences that you didn't want to go too far into detail, but that intrigued me that you had an experience on psychedelics with light beings that came to you, and they were dragging your body, showing you this is you if you don't stop heroin or something to that extent. Could you touch
Yeah,
on that maybe?
yeah. So one of the things that happened was I had a friend who was making DMT, and so I always went to psychedelics. So I had gotten my hands on DMT one night, and I actually share this story. I never shared on any of the testimonies. So the first time I did it, I'm at my friend's house and we're laying on his bed, and I hit it, and it's weird with that. It's like you feel like you can't hit it again, and then it's that final like hit that really sends. And so I take that and then I lay down this bed, and it felt like there was a hole in my back. It felt like I had a gunshot wound in my back or something, right? And I could
Wow.
feel my soul leaking out of my body. And I remember it was the scariest thing in my life because I felt like I was dying. 100% felt like
Yep.
I was dying. And I said, "Oh no, I'm not ready to go. I'm not ready to go. No, no, no." But then
Hmm.
I remembered, like, wait, this doesn't kill you. Oh yeah, this is. I'm like processing, like, oh, you're all right. And um, I calm myself down and I just like submit to the process or whatever. And I feel my soul like leave my body. And then next thing I know, I'm laying down somewhere and there's all these people over top me. The girl with one of those big like carnival lollipops. And then like
Hmm.
it was like I was at a carnival and everyone was happy to see me. They're all dancing around me and I'm like, what the heck? Like the room just kind of disappeared. I'm in this other place. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, um, and all of a sudden it was like the girl like came towards me, and all of a sudden I started feeling myself sink, and they're like kind of standing over me at this point, pushing me down. And then they started like throwing dirt on me, like burying me. They was like they were burying me alive, and they were
Whoa.
happy. They're like,
Oh
I
man.
couldn't like it was like it was like I couldn't see that they were like throwing dirt on me, but but I could. It was really hard to explain, but they were doing the
Hmm.
movements of a
Hmm.
shovel, and then I could feel something like falling on me, and I was going lower and lower as it happened. And so they're happy about it, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? But then and I drift out of it. And so again I'm like, dude, that's another thing. Like that is,
Yeah.
like blew my mind. I was like, this is not a normal drug. This thing is crazy.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got,
Yeah.
hooked into wanting to find it. It was just kind of hard to get your hands on. But anyways, that after that I had done it a few days later, and this time I went to my house and I kind of said, let me experiment with it. I said, I got a little, amount. Let me do it a few times and see, let me play with the music. Let me play with the lights. Let me, like
Right.
scientists or something. Let me figure out how this stuff will be the best. Right. And
Right.
so I lay in a room and I do it the first time with like, I was playing Tool. Remember, I was playing Vicarious, and I went
Right.
in a black room and I just laid there. And it was like the first time I did it, was too much. It was like I was in a disco in outer space, and like it was so fast, and I didn't even process what was happening. It was just like like and then I did it
Yeah.
again with just complete silence and just black
Mm.
room, lay down. And so I did
Mm-hmm.
that, and all of a sudden I feel that first feeling of dying, and then all of a sudden I noticed that my ceiling had extended to like infinity. It was just turned into a black sky basically. And then I see these two colors start spinning down. They start coming out both corners of the room, and they stand
Yep.
before me, and they're flames of fire, like light bodies. It's like it's fire, but one's like orangish yellow, the other one's like reddish something, and there's just these two colors, and I'm like, the shape of a human. And then at the same time that I see them, there's another one that is sitting next to me. And because I'm laying in bed, so you think like if you're laying in bed and someone was sitting in a chair, you'd see like their shins. So I
Yeah.
see these shins that are like 8 feet tall. So I can't even see the top of the body. I just see shins that like go up the ceiling, where I'm like, dude, this thing, whatever's sitting next to me is like 30 feet tall. And then I see its hands come like over me, and I sense his hands and feel his hands like come over me, and they're doing like Reiki movements over me, like
Oh
these like
man.
little hand signs, and like it's going back
Oh
and
Lord have
forth over my
mercy.
body.
Yeah.
And this thing is telling me, telepathically, relax, we're here to help you, just, you know peace, like be still, kind of thing, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, okay, okay. And I start to feel that they are there to help me. But what's something interesting that I'll never forget is just looking back at all this, I never trusted them. Like I never actually
Right.
felt peace. Like it always felt like there was like a shark underneath the surface. It was like there's something sketchy about these things. And so they're kind of like just standing there. And then a few minutes later, my door swings open. So now I'm like seeing this actually play out, and not like a mind vision, like full on seeing this happen. My door swings open, and then another one of those light beings walks in the room, and they're dragging something. And when I see what dragging, it's me. So now I'm seeing my own body getting dragged into the room, and then this thing next to me is telling me this is what's going to happen to you if you keep doing heroin. And because I used to get high in my bathroom, so it was like they pulled me out of my bathroom. So I'm like, he's like, this is what
Wow.
you need to stop heroin. This is what's gonna happen. You keep doing it. So they're giving me advice that's sounds good, obviously, right? And telling me, do this and do this, and telling me this like advice for a living. And then at that point, actually another one came, and this one was I think purple. I can't remember if it was the first one was one was orange. I don't remember if the other one was purple. It's like a purple green, or the next one was purple green. But anyways, another one comes that's like purple and green, and it's holding a baby though. This one's holding like another mini one that's like orange and yellow, and it's like spinning around. And for some reason, I had thought that that was supposed to be a baby. Like, I had a child at that time that was around like 2 years old, so I'm thinking like, is that supposed to be, like a daughter, or but it was a woman one. And so anyways, then it starts fading off, and then go, and again I'm like sitting there shocked, and then like the next hour I could like see my aura, and like I'm seeing lights come off me, and it's pretty wild. So yeah, yeah, those were probably the
That's
two
crazy.
most memorable ones.
That's intense. That's super intense. And then from there, what is your so looking back on like the psychedelic usage, like how do you view that now from where you're at with Christianity? Like, do you view those? How do you view them? How do you view those experiences with psychedelics from where you're at now with Christianity?
you know it was hard for me, like when I was going through jail and getting saved radically, right? I had a conversation with someone about acid, and and we were talking about the DMT experiences, and that really challenged me. Like I was like, dude, that felt like it was right, like, and it was so powerful. And so there was always this question in my mind, like psychedelics, everything else, all the worldly stuff was like done. I'm not doing it. I'm turning
Right.
from it. But psychedelics were always like kind of in the back of my mind, like pushed away on a shelf. It was like I don't know what to think about them. And that's kind of felt like I was like, I don't even know what to do with those. Like what? I don't know what to
Right.
think about it. Um, and so that now, I ended up the exact same thing that you explained in the beginning, 2020, like 2 years and some change into my walk. I had basically had that thought come up, like there's something missing, the whole manna thing with mushrooms. And so I'm thinking like, all right, there's let's try this. And so that's probably the thing I'm not going to get, because that's a long one. I don't want to get into the whole story of that one. But that was
For
a
sure.
whole nother situation. It ended up very bad. And long story short, what ended up happening was I had an outer body experience where I was in, the spiritual realm, and there was demons on my right. I end up seeing like the kingdom of heaven is what I think it is or was, and I'm seeing, these different dimensions and levels of heaven, and so these demons are basically bringing me to court, and they're basically accusing me. And so what they said is that this
Oh,
kid's
Lord have
coming into
mercy. It
our
sounds like the
kingdom.
toll houses. Oh
That's
man.
what that's so yeah, that's kind of what started the whole orthodoxy thing in a lot of ways. That was one of the big things that started it all for me. And so I'm like, and it was like now that when I started reading about toll houses, that's kind of what it was. And I'm getting
Yeah.
accused,
Yeah.
and yeah. And so it ended up being really scary. Like I felt like I was in
Yeah.
hell for a couple hours. I felt like my life was over. It was the most terrifying thing ever. But then at one point, Jesus comes out and he says, "This one's mine. He belongs to me." And he like takes me, and he pleads my cause, and he takes me
Wow.
and brings me back into his, his kingdom.
Phew.
And so that
That just gave me
was, I mean,
goosebumps. That's
yeah,
powerful.
yeah, and that, I mean, after that, I mean, there's no way I could ever do psychedelics again. Like, there's just no way that I could.
Exactly.
But I'm gonna be so honest with you. Like, after that, there was no way I'd even think about doing them ever again. But then after that, obviously, so many people were, especially when my testimony came out, so many people were asking questions. So many people, what about microdosing? What about this? What about right? And
Same.
I still was
Yep.
like, look, I can tell you this. Like, I know for a fact this was my experience. But I've even had Christians that are like, yeah, I'm a Christian, and I've had at least 3 or 4 Christians tell me that they've done psychedelics and it was a good experience for them. And so it's so
Yeah,
hard to
it can
just,
start that way. It can start that way.
yeah, yeah. And
It
so that's
never ends that way if you keep following it. Is what at least that was my experience. Like
no, and that's
it'll
yeah,
kind of it'll like entice you almost, and it'll give you like good experiences at first to get you deeper and deeper. But
yeah.
I mean, once I had a final experience too where I experienced hell, and it was like
Mm-hmm.
I was separated from God, and I was in this thick, thick darkness that was like palpable and like just felt like shame, deep, deep
Mm,
shame. And after like coming out of that, there's no. And I felt demons trying to remove the memory of my son from my memory, and it's like trying to
wow.
take my soul, and it was like there's no coming. I could never go back to something like that after an experience. I mean, I experienced hell, and it was but I'm grateful for it because it set me on fire for God. But I wouldn't recommend it to anybody else because I almost lost my mind and soul, and it's really not. I would rather people learn vicariously through me, and that's why I try to do these talks and
Right.
speak with people that have had similar journeys because
No,
I
and
think
that's
it's
why I
powerful.
try not. Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I try not to like glorify things either. Like try to, I'm explaining
Yeah,
accurately. But the I almost didn't share that testimony. And dude, I didn't share that till like 2 years after it happened. And the reason why, 2 or 3 years after it happened, actually, the reason why is because I didn't want people to be, tempted to go do like, because a lot of people were like, well, it sounded like that ended good for you. It sounded like that. And it's like,
right,
no, like, dude,
right.
that was pure mercy, like hanging by a thread mercy.
Yep,
Like that was not a good
exactly.
experience. Like God used
Yeah,
it in the end, yes, but it was like what came with that. And I think even the repercussions I'm still now seeing from it,
Yep.
that it's like, no, it wasn't good at all. And so the way I view it is that psychedelic, this is where I've landed. And this is what I tell people. Look, if like you're free to search that out on your own with God, and that's between you and God. This is my stance. I believe that psychedelics are illegal access to the spiritual realm. I believe that it's the equivalent of going and robbing a bank for money versus working hard for your money. It's taking
Hmm.
your will into your own hands, and I decide that right now I'm going to go into the spirit realm, and I decide that I'm going to have this encounter and this experience outside of God's will, outside of his grace, outside of his leading, and therefore it's
Hmm.
illegal, which means that you can go into those things, and the devil is allowed to deceive you to whatever degree that he
Yep.
wants, because you gave him that access. You legally came into that
Yeah.
realm, unsent. And because of that, like you said, the devil is not going to just show up and be like, I'm the devil and we're here to kill you, kind of thing. Like, it's no, I'm
Hmm.
going to show you colors. I'm going to show you bright lights. I'm going to make you feel, a false joy. You're going to laugh. You're going to have cool thoughts. I'm going to give you all types of stuff to where no part of you is going to think that this is bad news. And it's not until years, maybe months later, that these days you go to turn away from it and you realize you have 500 cords of unrighteousness wrapped around you and wickedness and the cords of death that have entangled you, and it's like, I had a prayer meeting. You just reminded me of this. I had a prayer meeting like a year ago, I guess, and this lady comes and she's sitting there, and I was praying, and God kept telling me to pray for mental, like I would pray for mental illness and to my attacks on mine. And like 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, like I would feel led to pray for that again. And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, God, why do you keep me pray for this? Like, it's like the fourth time I've prayed for it, and so after the meeting, I go and like, introduce myself to the woman, and she's sitting there, she's like, and I needed that. She's like, you kept praying for mind, the mind and mental illness and stuff. She said, that's what I'm here for. and,
Oh,
and
wow.
um and so what happened with her is she was following some, yogi guru type guy.
Yep.
And it started off with him leading her and her husband into taking MDMA. So they start taking MDMA,
Yep.
right? And
Yep.
then I think it was mushrooms. So they start taking mushrooms. And then he
Hmm.
needs them to take acid. And so what happens is this woman
Yep.
lost her mind. And I
Yep.
mean, to the point where she was medically, um, she was put into a psych ward for, I think, 2 years. She lost her ability to be a mom. She lost her ability to be a wife. She lost her ability to speak. She lost her ability to comprehend. Like, she was something, like she completely went psychotic because of
Yep.
acid, right?
Yeah.
And so when I met her, she was just now coming, and you could still tell she was still like really off socially. Like,
Right.
just, you could tell that, like,
Yeah.
she was very normal in the sense, like, you could tell that weird, because you could tell that there was something there once that isn't now. Like, you could tell, like, this was a very smart woman, probably, and a very different person 5 years ago. And this acid trip completely changed her.
Yep.
And so she was like kind of getting back to normal. So the thing is, like, people take it so lightly, and especially nowadays,
Yeah.
people are pushing this agenda, like mushrooms are going to save your life or something. And just everything that comes with that world is dangerous. And it's like,
Yeah.
there's some page I follow, or I don't even follow them. I saw them and was kind of keeping them for a while on TikTok, and it's like just people talking about psychedelics. And the one thing that I've noticed now, spending so many times in that world and then now seeing it from the other side, is it's just sensual experiences. Like, there's no fruit from it. It's like
Mhm.
everyone that mostly everyone that does, it's just like, yeah. And then this dragon came, and then I felt like, I was just spinning into the water. And then it was like, I just knew, like, whoa, like, stars really do care about us. And then I
You're
found, like,
right.
nothing matters. Like, like, and then it's
Yeah.
like, after that, guess what you're doing? Going and getting drunk and getting more high on other things. It's like, I'm
Exactly.
sure there's a there's a select people that do it spiritually, and they're, are serious about holistic health. And there's a big group of people that are into that as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
However, at the end of the day, I've never seen anybody, because of psychedelics, yield fruit that's greater than following Christ. And that's where I land.
Exactly.
Like, I never see true love
Yeah.
yielded, true self-control. I never see the death of the ego, like pride.
Yeah.
It's so.
I see a lot of false enlightenment, like these false aha kind of moments that happen over very simple, like basic things. Like, you know,
Yeah.
that like, but in the moment and when you're on the psychedelics, it seems like, oh my, I just figured out, like, I unlocked one of the keys to the universe, you know? But then you come out of it and you're like, no, I was just like, I was just staring at a wall for like 5 hours, dude. And then, like, you know, or
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And the thing is with I got the same questions coming out of my psychedelic experience and then moving right into orthodoxy. People were like, you know, like that sounded like a good thing, and asking me about like microdosing. And it's just like, whether you're microdosing, whether you're macrodosing or in the middle dosing, you're still heading in the same direction, just at different speeds. And that's what I tried to
Yeah.
stress to them. And I remember coming out of that experience,
Hmm.
that psychedelic experience, and opening up the Bible just to Genesis, like just the first few pages, like stuff that, you know, I've heard like so many times I can't even remember, going to Catholic school growing up, like, and just reading those pages from a whole new viewpoint, and just being like reading
Hmm.
the story of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and being like, oh, that's what I just did. That's what I was literally like trying to take this shortcut, and I was looking for to a piece of creation for enlightenment when I should have been looking to Christ in repentance, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like a messing up the order of creation. It's like I'm looking to a piece of creation for something I should be looking to the creator for.
Yeah.
And that kind of
Yeah.
that kind of
And
stuck with me.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and then um I wanted to ask, so with orthodoxy, I don't think we touched on orthodoxy at all. How did you start coming back somewhat, because I see icons on your wall in the background. How did you start coming back into orthodoxy in some sort of way, in some sort of fashion?
Yeah, so I was excited to talk about this. You know that so it's funny because this icon behind me, I got a couple. They're actually my grandmother's, right? And so I remember
Mm,
when she first passed away. She actually passed away the week I got baptized. You know, as a born again Christian, right? And so, anyways, I remember I
okay.
went to her house after I got to visit my uncle, my grandfather, and she's giving away so much stuff, right? And so she altar, beautiful altar. She has all these icons, really not like really nice stuff. And I remember, like, at that point, I saw it and I said, "Man, I love these things so much." I was like, "These things are so beautiful. I just love them." I was like, "But it's demonic. This is idolatry," And that's at the Christian at my point in Christianity at that time. That's what I was taught. So I'm like,
Yeah.
it's demonic. I can't have them. And so I was like, "No,
Right.
I don't
Right.
want them." And so anyways, that was kind of where I was at. I thought, it's just idolatry and this and all the things you hear that I didn't really look into for myself. I mean, I did understand the perspective on it, and I understood biblically why, and I had my, reasons. And I even would talk to Catholics and stuff and say, whatever, thought about it. But anyways, what happened was after that mushroom experience, somebody reached out to me and they said, sounds like you were in a toll house. Have you ever heard about toll houses? So I started to look into toll houses.
Yeah.
And so as I'm reading about toll houses, I'm like, this is it. I'm reading like quotes that are,
That.
referring to toll houses that are, even uh uh first and third or second third century quotes that are kind of explaining it in a different way, where they're not saying that's what it is, but that's what it was. And all types of things where I'm like, that really was what it was. So I started looking
Yeah.
just more, and I've always read, like, I've always been interested in the Desert Fathers, because I have a book called 2000 Years of Charismatic Christianity. And so it starts off in the first century and tells testimonies of, this guy and that guy. And so I
Nice.
was always interested in the Desert Fathers. So I always read early stuff, right? But I always read it through the lens of charismatic Christianity. And so
Right.
I was always under the impression that, in Orthodox, they don't believe in miracles. Like, it's a cessationist type of, group. Like, we don't believe in miracles. And so in my view, I knew 100% that miracles were real. I knew that, like, the prophetic was real, because I mean, I've had God give me people's names, and then be like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
and I won't say, is your name this, but I'll say, hey, what's your name? And it'll be the name God told me. Like, so I've had
Right.
so many
Yeah.
experiences where no one could tell me it's not real to have a prophetic, thing happen. I've seen a few healings. I don't claim to have a gift of healing, like I can go heal
Yeah.
people, but I have prayed for hundreds and hundreds of people, but I have seen, a good 20, 30, I've seen a good handful of healings. So
Yeah.
like I know that stuff was real. So that was one of my big off puts towards it, is I thought they just didn't believe in any of it, and I thought it was just all like just tradition and this and that, right? And so, but anyways, I started looking at the toll houses, and then one day, this was probably almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I felt led to go back to the church I got baptized in, and so I go to this church, and it's a Russian Orthodox church, and I'm going, and at that time, I didn't know any of the structure of a service, right? So like, the priest walks out, and I don't know to like, do the bow, and so, like I just felt so out of
Right. Yeah.
place, just had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
But I'm there, and I remember my first thought was like judgmental, like I was like, why do I need to do this? Why do like I was like, this is so religious. Like that was my first thought inside my
Right.
heart. I was like, this just feels so, I just feel so stuck. Like it just feels so stiff. But then like God, the Holy Spirit like convicted me and was like, maybe you're the one being religious, kind of thing. Like you have your own stiffness that you're sticking to, right? And so I
Right.
just was like, you know what? Let me just yield to this whole thing. And so I started, singing the stuff, and I'm, Lord have mercy, Lord have mercy. I'm doing all the things. I'm like getting into it,
Yeah.
and I'm giving myself over to this, liturgy service. And at one point I just started to get, it was like this slideshow. It was like I had this moment where it was like God showed me, and just in my mind, like this slideshow my whole life. And then he brought me to this moment where it was like, you were here when you were a little baby, and I kept you through all that stuff. So he's reminding me
Ooh.
of all the years of just all the craziness. And then like, look, I brought you back. Like you're still here. Like, and you're where I found that kind of thing, right? It was this
Yeah.
full circle moment. And I'm just getting like, just feeling the presence of God. I'm just like tearing up and stuff. And then I went and I partook of the Eucharist, and I go up and I take, and I told the priest, like, I got baptized here. I want to, take this. And so I took the, partook of the Eucharist, and I remember walking back to my seat and getting emotional and crying more. And I said, why do I feel like this is the first time I took like communion? Like I was like, why
Mm-hmm.
do I feel like this is like why do I feel like all the other times didn't count, or like they were just like it wasn't spiritual, but this was spiritual. Like this was something real, and those ones weren't. All these years, like 5 years of Christianity, 4 years, whatever it was at the time. So that then kind of gave me another dose of like interest. And so I would say the last year specifically, I just started diving into like early church fathers, and just reading Saint Isaac and Nineveh and Ignatius and Athanasius, and just reading all these guys. Um and I found that for me it was like the earlier writings that I read so much more like profound and just rich than like your typical pastor today writes a book on this and that, and it's just I'm not judging anybody, but they're just basic to me. Like they don't fulfill me in
Right.
any way. It's like, yeah, God says you can have joy, and 5 scriptures that says talks about joy. Yeah, and it's just like these like just it just seems like a I don't know, like so when I'm reading these older things, it was like they're really expounding like the process of a soul, and the like, and all these things where it's just like they're actually explaining these things at a level that I've experienced but couldn't articulate. So that
Right.
was really, and even now is one of the biggest things I think that has really pushed me towards it more, is just going to services and just feeling like I experienced God in a completely different way than I was used to.
Yeah.
The writings actually making the most sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so this has kind of been like a process the last 6, 7 months where I've really just been, opening up. And then it was like I started looking into stuff, right? So then I'm reading the pamphlets that they had at the church about the icons, and I'm reading. So it's
Yeah.
like slowly everything that I had an issue with, I thought, is getting debunked in my mind. So I'm like, okay, now I don't think I. So now I'm like, hey, Dad, do you still have that box of all those icons that Nana had? It's like, no, I'm trying to get the icons that she had, and buying some and whatever. And so that was like one thing where I was like, all right, I don't believe that these is idolatry anymore. I'm on board with this. And it's like, all right,
Right.
I'm on board with it. And I just kind of was going down the list of things that I thought were an issue for me. And so that's kind of, I'm still in the process of that. But I am definitely very, very open to it. I think, and I don't know if you have anything to say. I was in it.
Yeah, no,
Before we go into
I'm sorry, I was
resurrection.
over here trying to look up a quote from Saint John Damascus because he has such a good quote on the defensive icons. It's
Mm,
Saint John of Damascus. It's something along the lines of, I'm gonna try to paraphrase it because I'm not finding it. It was we don't worship matter, we worship the God of matter who deigned to inhabit matter. Oh man, it's so good. It's talking about like the incarnation and how
mm-hmm.
Christ came to us so we do have his image, and we're not worshiping the block of wood, but we are worshiping God who through his
Right.
incarnation we have his image. You see, it was like, man, he the way he worded it though. Oh
You
man,
can
it was
send it
so
to me. Yeah, when you
beautiful.
find it, send it to me. Well, here's like one of
Yeah,
my things that really got me was once I figured out like veneration isn't, I always thought they were like it was like worship and stuff, and I do have a couple questions
yeah,
about a few things
yeah,
actually with that, but
yeah.
like for example, I was doing a priest had told me to do the prayer like the inexhaustible cup, right? And so I've been
Right,
doing the akathist of the inexhaustible cup, right? And
right.
it's very, I mean, it's challenging for me at some points because I'm like in my mind theologically, like, and for example, it's like the in that prayer, it's saying like your icon has saved us, and like so it's like why am I praying that an image will save me kind of thing, and so that was one thing where I'm like. I'm 100% on board and okay with the veneration, right? Like I understand, yeah, like
Right.
let's respect this. It's a window to heaven. For example, if somebody paints a picture of Jesus, it's art in the charismatic church. It's prophetic art. But if you have a icon of Jesus, it's idolatry,
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
it don't make
Mm,
sense at all. And so even
yeah,
with the saints, like there I see, and where I'm at with them is like there it's inspiration for me. It's a reminder, and it does have that feeling that you are surrounded by the cloud of witnesses. Like, I have
yeah,
my icon corner in my room, and I do feel that like it's like a different type of conviction or awareness that is associated with
yeah.
it. And
And
so
in
that's
terms
kind of
of
where I'm
like,
at.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, in terms of like the miracles too, there was like, I remember you mentioning the miracles and like getting prophetic aspects
Mhm.
from God. There's like my patron saint, Saint Paisios. He was actually clairvoyant, and
Mhm.
that was a gift that he received from the Holy Spirit just from being like an ascetic and a monk, and he was a monk at Mount Athos just for many years of just kind of just deep prayer, the Jesus prayer. And it's something that is real and does exist, and there is miracles even outside of the church. And I've heard priests say, why do miracles happen outside of the church? And because I experienced miracles outside of the church, and he was like,
Mhm.
ultimately they happen to bring us closer to God, to lead us deeper in our
Mhm.
journey with God. Because it's like when that happened, I mean, my faith was even more, like convicted, and it became stronger and it grew. And I finally found this quote. So the quote is from Saint John Damascene of Damascus, and it's, I do not worship matter, I worship the God of matter, who became matter for my sake and deemed to inhabit matter, who worked out my salvation through matter. I will not cease from
Mm.
honoring that matter which works for my salvation. I venerate it, though not as God. And I thought that was like the best
Mm.
defense of
Yeah, that's
iconography, and
all.
the best
I actually
breakdown.
read that one. That's really good. That's really good.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what
Yeah.
I've never read that Akathist. I would talk to maybe because I don't know how to answer everything. Like I've never read it
Yeah.
personally, and there's certain things in prayers that I don't totally understand yet that were written at times when like that are just like, yeah, I definitely think it's beneficial to speak to a priest about like certain aspects like that, because I know they don't in the church, they don't worship, like they don't see they do venerate, they do see a difference between worship and veneration, of
Mhm.
like
Absolutely.
worshiping God, like the worship is like for God, but we do venerate, we honor the icon as like just
Right.
like the way that Saint John of Damascus explained it in terms of the incarnation. But yeah, I thought that was
Yeah,
a good
absolutely. No, I'm
explanation
on
for
board
them.
with that. Yeah, I'm gonna ask him about the priest out. I'm gonna ask him about that. but yeah, and like there's a lot of things that have because here's the thing, it's like I was in the charismatic culture and it got so toxic for me. Like there's so much like striving in a and not in like it's all about your title. It's like, and I'm not trying to go in on anything. This is just an
Right,
overall observation that I've made in that circle, right? It was like it's all
right.
about being like a prophet or an apostle. It's these titles and being anointed and being like becoming somebody that the whole church idolizes, and you're the guy.
Yep, yep, yeah,
And
yeah, 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 yeah,
uh
yeah. Mm.
and it's like it's just such a it's like there's so much just weird stuff that happens in it. And again, though, I absolutely still love charismatic culture too, and that's what
Right,
has
right,
really
yeah, right,
that's
right.
what's kept me from fully like being 100% like, oh, I'm just Orthodox, only Orthodox, all board Orthodox, because there's still a lot of aspects of it that I still love. Like personally, I still like praying in tongues. Like there's so much fruit in that I like, we talk about, and I know in Orthodoxy this is big of praying, like constant prayer, being in constant prayer. And you could do the Jesus prayer, and I'll do that. I'll do the Jesus prayer for an hour, and I'll do the stuff with, and I'll pray the akathist prayers of our beautiful Jesus Christ, and I'll partake of Orthodox prayers, and I'll do Orthodox stuff. But then it's like, if I have nothing to say or I don't know what to say, I still like praying in tongues, and it's been something fruitful in my life. I like the idea of like the more like spirit led freedom, that I experience in charismatic, where it's there's so much emphasis on relationship and like God being Father and this kind of stuff, which I'm not saying isn't Orthodoxy, but it's just a different spin on it, that where I felt like I just felt loved in a sense of I don't need to do all this stuff. And this is more actually referring to like mystic culture, like Christian mystics, like uh, Madame Goyon. I really like her, and so I'm reading mystics too, and it's like they have this idea that like we're already there kind of thing, right? And like that's their mentality of like we're already in heavenly places, we're already loved, like it's just basically resting in God. And so it's like I found fruit, and like because I've listened to so many things, and I found fruit in so many lanes. And so when I started to get more serious Orthodox, I'll never forget, I told my friend, I said, dude, I think I'm becoming Orthodox. He was over for a prayer night. I said, hey, I'm becoming Orthodox, dude. And he said, so am I not your brother anymore? He said, so am I, and he wasn't being like, he was just like, so am I not your brother anymore then? Because I've heard in Orthodoxy, it's like, you have to be in this church. You have to be a part of the church, or you're basically not, it's not, another one way I did hear it that I liked, the priest told me, it's like, there's all those people doing the works of Jesus, but you get invited into the inside conversations with the disciples, basically. Like you're in that inner group kind of thing, which and so that's been one of my biggest turnoff. But this is all Protestantism. Protestants do the same thing. Other Catholic, they can't really know God. Other Orthodox, they don't really know God. It's idol. So it's like everyone does that. And I guess my problem is like when I read great writers and just people I've admired in the faith, I see them come from Catholicism. I've seen them, a lot of Orthodox saints, but there's also been, more of the charismatic type people that have really impacted me too. And so where I'm at now, the biggest hurdle for me is I don't know that I'll ever be able to get to the point where I can uh it, not validate what I've seen, the fruit I've seen outside of it as well, because like I actually
Right.
just decided recently that I'm committed to going to, Orthodox church. So like I'm gonna be, a part of the Orthodox church by my house. I've been, because Lent, I went to the Wednesday night akathist, and I'm going tonight to Vespers, and so I'm gonna, I'm doing the thing, it's just, but I still like listening to other people, and hearing different perspectives and stuff like that. And so that's kind of where I'm at with it. But
Yeah,
overall, I would say I've enjoyed the one thing, the big thing too, I'll say, this was a huge thing for me. The In charismatic Protestant circles, it is crazy with division. I mean, it's insane. it's like you go on one video, it's like this a preacher debunking, exposing this preacher, and the next video is that preacher, you know, confirming this one, and it's like it's everyone's on different pages. It's like you'll have three people
Yeah.
say this guy is a witch, he's a false prophet, and then you'll have them say towards another guy or two guys or whatever, like they're legit anointed men of God, but then those two guys, other guy called a witch, will work together. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
it's like, how does that, like, so the
Yeah.
same spirit that's telling you, you know, it's just weird. Like, and so it gets to the point
Yeah.
where, like, I don't know who to trust, you know, like I don't know
Mhm,
who's legit at
mhm.
this point. I mean, yeah, like have discernment, you know, test the
Yeah.
spirit, cool, but it's confusing when you have like everyone on different pages, and it's like it's so much division and drama. So when I look at orthodoxy, I'm not saying it's not there. I don't know. All I know is that I haven't seen it yet, where you see an Orthodox priest saying this Orthodox priest is false and fake, you know, and I
Right.
don't see any drama. I like the idea of like I like the just the peacefulness and the calmness at the services. It's beautiful for me.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. And that's kind of where I'm like, I'm over the charismatic stuff with all the jumping around and screaming and shout. Like I'm too old for it. I feel like, you know, like I want my
Right.
peace, and so
Yeah. What I noticed when I had my stint, because coming out of that psychedelic phase of my life, and like I was still kind of doing the Protestant thing, and then after coming out of that huge ceremony, like my 15-gram ceremony, I was still in a Protestant church, and I was in a
mm,
non-denominational Protestant church. And what I noticed, like one of the things is like it kind of like it seemed to me to revolve around like a cult of personality. Like it was all about the sermon. Everything revolved around the sermon and the person giving the sermon, and it was like that was the Eucharist. Like that was like
mm,
in Orthodoxy, how if you notice how everything centers around the Eucharist, like when the
right,
priest goes and does the procession with the Eucharist, everybody follows the Eucharist, and it's like that's like the pastor in the sermon in the Protestant churches that I attended, it seemed like that took the place of the Eucharist. So I that was
mm,
like something that I observed coming from that into Orthodoxy. I thought that was interesting, and I thought it spoke for it kind of speaks for itself. And at the same time, I was still enjoying specific people's really good sermons. I was still getting really good sermons. I was like, but his sermons are so good. But I was like,
right.
but like I don't know. I just felt like there was definitely a difference there, and it almost spoke for itself. Like there was something almost unspoken there that was being communicated just through that action,
Yeah,
through where the focus was directed.
yeah, no, I agree, and I agree with you on that, and that's one of the bigger things for me as well. Where like I said, it's just it's about the preacher. It's all about like it's making these like idols of men, and it's all about just what you do for God. It's all about, you know, it's like I found a lot of pride. There's a lot of pride in that world. I found like there's a lot of pride. There's a lot of ego, and it's all
Right,
about like, you know, if God's using you in miracles or not, you know, and
right,
that's
right,
kind of
right,
how it
right, right.
seems for me. It's like, you know, when if you're a prophet, you can prophesy, you know, and then that leads me to my next thing. Like the unaccountability and the prophetic really turned me off. Like the prophetic that I see in Christianity is so generic. It's like you'll have someone come up and be like, you know, hey, I feel like, you know, someone's depressed here. And it's like, yeah, like 80% of the world's depressed, you know, like that's, you know, or, hey, I feel like you dealt with depression. And it's like, dude, that's such
Yeah,
a like, if you ask that to
yeah,
three
yeah.
people, two of them are going to say yes. Like, I feel like you've been going through some hard times. And it's like, who hasn't gone
Come
through some
on.
hard times?
Yeah,
So it's like, I saw that like
yeah,
over time, I'm seeing all these prophetic words that are so generic, unspecific. Like it's something that you could tell anybody at any time, and they're gonna be like, yeah. So,
yeah,
but when someone thinks like this is what God's saying to me, and don't get me wrong, I think there are times that God can say something generic to
yeah.
somebody, but if it's really from Him, it will be like it'll testify of itself to that person specifically.
Exactly.
But what I saw was people were giving me words about this and about that. And I never saw any of the things they said happen. And then if you say, well, it didn't
Right.
happen, they'll say, oh, you didn't do something
They
right.
blame
And
it
so
on you. Yep.
yeah, they'll say, oh, you just didn't to do it right. And so
Mhm.
it's like, it's, it just started to get so unappealing where I started to, like I was on TikTok this one time, and it was crazy because I was talking about this, and then I get on TikTok and I see someone live, they're prophesying to people, right? And I just click on, I'm just listening, and he asked this girl to come up, and he says, who's sharing, or someone's name. He said, who's this girl? She says, she's like, I don't know anybody with that name. And he's like, yeah, who is she? Like, and she's like, well, I know this like one girl from my hometown, but I don't know her. And he's like, yeah, her. He said, yeah, God said he's gonna deliver her. He said, yeah, God said he's gonna deliver her, right? And
Lord of
she's
mercy.
like, okay, like, what do you, like, it's me like telling you, like, yeah, this guy, I know God's into, but it's like, why would he be telling her? But anyways, it was like he was
Yes.
trying to make this thing work, right?
Mm.
And then he calls up the next kid and does the exact same thing. He's like, who's I don't remember the names, but it was like, who's Miriam? And he's like, I don't know, like a Miriam. I like my sister's name's Martha. Yeah, Martha. Like, it's like, what? Come on, man. Like, so that's the type of stuff that you just see where it's like,
Yeah.
it's so hard to like respect it, and it just makes a mockery of the things of God, and it's just like,
Exactly. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not cool, because I believe in the prophetic. Like, I have had people give me a
Exactly.
word that is from God. Like, someone told me my testimony. They said, God's about to put your testimony on YouTube and it's going to reach millions. And literally, I think it was within that year that happened. And so I believe in it. And so that's why I don't like seeing it so abused and so mishandled, and just everybody always has a word, and just people just loosely say things. And so that was a huge turn off. Like, that's one of the big things that turned me off. Is like how many times I've heard like, God said he's about, and it's just something like outlandish that doesn't happen. They're just stirred up in emotions at the time, and just, yeah, and it's, so a lot of that stuff has kind of just turned me off. And so did were
Yeah.
you involved in that type of circle, or were you kind of more in like a Reformed Protestant church?
I started like the first Protestant church I started attending was kind of like Baptist. It wasn't officially Baptist, but the main guy there was Baptist. And then from there, I actually experienced a miracle there where we won a car, where my wife
Mm,
had a vision in a dream, and like she was like, we're gonna win this car in a raffle. And I was like, man, it's like I don't know if I want to put all my faith on that. I was like, yeah. I was like super skeptical. I'm not gonna lie. I was super skeptical. I was super skeptical, and we needed a car like bad. Like we needed our family car, just like it was done. It was done. And we were desperate. We were in a very desperate financial situation, and there's this raffle, and like I guess we get to the place, the raffle, like where they're gonna call out the winner, and we find out. So they're calling the names. They're calling the names out. They do the thing. They do like a random number or name generator on the phone. By chance, the girl who's the assistant of the priest like accidentally presses the button, and it goes off, and he's like, "Oh, you pressed it?" And he like, "Oh, wait, that happened after." So first, he reads off a name. He reads off a
mm,
name from the random name generator, and the person's not there. Like
yeah.
you signed up to win a free car, and you didn't come to win the car. That's crazy. That like
They didn't think
what
they
are the
was gonna
chances
win.
of
They're like, we
that?
ain't
And
winning
my
that.
wife my wife said that was gonna happen. So already my mind's like, oh dang, this is crazy. So my wife said they're gonna call someone and they're not gonna be there, and then we're gonna. It feels weird even talking about it, because like if you talk about this in Orthodoxy, they'll be like, be careful. But this is what you're talking about, and this is real, and I've experienced it. And there's people in Orthodoxy that know it's real too. I think they just want us to be careful because we can fall into certain traps too. But the thing is, I've
Yeah,
experienced this, and it's a real thing, and it's
it
and
is.
so they go on to the name generator. So she accidentally presses it, and it calls our name, and it was like slow motion, like the whole world kind of stopped, and it was just like, I don't know, it was just such a it was a powerful experience to me. And that, I mean, I did it. I ended up we stuck with that church for a while, but then they changed pastors, and we ended up drifting off. But I do feel like that miracle happened to lead me deeper in
Mm,
my faith, and eventually to where I'm at. And then going back, there was something you were talking about like the Orthodox Church. They some people can seem very judgmental about, but like the proper teaching in a lot of the, like my priest, what he talks about is he talks about the Orthodox Church as like an ark, like it's an ark,
mm,
and there's a flood coming, and you can survive the flood not being on the ark by chance, but you'd much rather be on the ark if a
mm,
flood's coming. Like that's the way he
right.
described it. So he's like, not everybody who's not in the ark is going to hell. Like only God knows their
Yeah.
heart. Only that's supposed to be the proper teaching in Orthodoxy, is we don't judge other religions, or like, I mean, we judge the ideas, we attack the ideas, but not the people. And the hearts of the people,
Right.
we don't know. Only God knows. So I think
Right.
that's what I've been taught, and I even had to learn that coming into Orthodoxy, being overzealous, almost attacking. I was attacking things, but I was really attacking me. I was attacking the old man that I was trying to put to
Mm,
death, that I was still
mm,
kind of attached to, and I was like attacking these things, and I was like, really, it's just like I was attacking an old version of myself, that I was kind of
right.
like mad at myself for falling into certain aspects. But
Hmm.
and
I get
and
what you're saying.
there's
Yeah.
an aspect. Yeah, yeah. I wanted to ask you, did you ever get to talk to Father Turbo? I remember you mentioning that you were going to have a talk with Father Turbo. I don't know if that ever happened, or if you're
Yeah.
ever
No,
able to
he
speak with him.
yeah, I mean, he's the one that kind of gave me the prayer to do, and we've talked a few times. And so there's kind of after our last conversation, it's kind of we came to, I think, an agreement of him being like a spiritual father to me. I didn't get like a super official, but I basically, he said, you need a spiritual father. Like he's like that, you need a spiritual father. And I said, all right, well, can be my spiritual father if you can. If you want to do that, tell me what to do. So that's kind
Glory
of
to
how our
God.
last conversation ended. Yeah. And again, like, this is all new, and I just want to I'm at a place where, because of where I was going at with church, man, I really stopped going to church. Like, I didn't forsake the assembling, in the sense that I had my Bible study with my guys. I had another ministry I was doing evangelism with. So I was always every week, around believers and stuff. But I just completely stopped going to church. I would go like once a month to just with my wife, or the church hop kind of thing, because leads worship at a church, and she doesn't really have much interest in Orthodoxy. She says she's like,
Right.
I'll go with you if you want, but I just stopped going because I was
It took
like,
a while before my wife got into Orthodoxy. By the way, it
yeah,
tends to, like, it can be a long and kind of like painful process, and it's not
mhm,
always like super quick. But it's,
yeah.
yeah. No, I didn't mean to interrupt. Let me let you continue.
No,
But I
no,
just wanted to
no,
add
you're
that.
fine, man. It's a conversation.
Right.
I was just saying, like, I was out of church for so long, and it wasn't because I wanted to be. I was just like, I just don't know where to go anymore. Like, I was like,
Right.
I can't go to like the big mega church stuff. Like, I can't do those anymore. I was like,
Right.
I can't go to those. So it was like, all right, Orthodox or the charismatic church I was going to. And it was just like, I don't know what to do. Like, and so I just kind of wasn't going. I was like, let me just keep like reading and praying and just trying to figure it out. And so when I talked to Father Turbo, he basically kind of rebuked me. And
Lord have mercy.
basically told me, like, you're spiritually dying, you're not partaking the sacraments, and like, it's I'm telling you what you need to do. And so I said, all right, say no more, I'm gonna go. And so I started going last Sunday, and then I have been going every service since. And that's what I told myself and my wife, that I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna see, if after like a year, like, I'll probably know really where God's put me, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Like. Yeah. I think that's awesome. That's what a blessing to have Father Turbo as a spiritual father, man. That's really cool. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, that was,
my
yeah,
favorite,
even that.
that's the Royal Path podcast. That's my favorite thing to listen to
Really?
in terms of orthodoxy right now. It's just really powerful for me.
Yeah, I heard that. And even that situation that was another thing I was gonna say. So the other thing that's interesting is, like, anytime I have a question, like the other day, I was reading this. I have a prayer book, right? One of my grandma's old prayer book. So I was reading through the prayers, right? And this was one of the things I spoke with Father Turbo about, and that I'm still kind of like trying to, I guess, understand better. But I was like, when I was like charismatic, like, I can just go pray in tongues, and sometimes I'll have a song come to me, and I'll sing a song unto God. And it's like my prayer time felt so free. And because of that, I felt like I could stay in prayer long and just kind of rest and just be with God, right? But then I started doing Orthodox prayers, and I'm like, it feels so rigid. Like, it just, like, I have to say, Lord have mercy, I have to say it 40 times. What if I only say it 35 times? What if, I like the bows, and I'm like, I feel like I'm getting a workout in, like, I'm, like, and
Yeah.
so it's
No,
like
you can. I turned
all
it
this
into a
stuff.
workout. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah, the prostrations, man. You could get a workout, some squats, you know.
Yeah, man, some burpees. Yeah. The but I said, I told him, I said, I feel like my heart is more caught up in reading something than engaging with God. And so it's like I have to read it. I can't memorize, 30-minute prayer written out, and I can't memorize this stuff. I'm sure I could, but I'm not right now. So it's like I get so caught up in saying this stuff and doing the thing that I don't feel like I'm really communing with God, and maybe that's
Yeah,
just something I have to get used to. He's
that
explained it like
happens.
kind of working
That
out.
happens at the beginning.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah, it
he
happens
explained
at the
it like kind of
beginning,
like, and then does the prayer change where you kind of feel like you get consumed by it or something?
dude. Dude, it's so weird. Like I was having problems like memorizing like morning prayers, and I wasn't even trying to memorize morning prayers. I was just saying morning prayers, and I was just like going through them, going through the motions, like and sometimes it could feel like you're just going through the motions. And then like one day, like I was like, I'm gonna try to say like what? Let me see if I could do it without reading it. Like see how much I have in my head, and I had the whole like almost 30 minutes. Like it was like I had a psalm memorized, I had another psalm memorized, I had the troparion memorized. I was like, I didn't even realize I was memorizing this stuff. It was about like 3 or 6 months in, and it just like I was like, I'm memorizing psalms, and that like, I mean, it like at that point, it's like I don't know, it felt good because I feel like that's something we've lost in this day. Like there's saints like Saint John Chrysostom, that Saint John Chrysostom like that had the whole like New Testament in his brain, that he could like any part of the New Testament. I don't think I'll ever be at that level. Lord have mercy. I'm just saying I think there was a different level of man existing in those times when we didn't have the distractions of all these cell phones. And I know technology can be used as a tool for good or for bad, but there's a lot of distractions nowadays that I feel like saints in orthodoxy didn't have back in the day, and they had more time to focus in on things that truly mattered, like the scriptures, like just worshiping God
Yeah.
constantly, and just you know and it's
So we might have a problem before I don't mean to cut you off, but my computer for some reason it's plugged in charging, but the battery's still like bleeding. So
okay,
it's saying I'm
no
six
worries, we
percent
can wrap it
battery,
up.
and but it's charging. So yeah, this is what you get for getting MacBooks off Facebook, right? I mean,
No
it's
worries, brother.
actually
No,
I
it's
got a
been a
really good deal. So
pretty good talk so far.
no, I can't. Yeah, it's been a great talk, but that was a really good point. I guess we could talk till the thing dies if you want. Like another 5 minutes, but that's because you reminded
Yeah,
me of like one of my biggest points. And so
yeah,
take this with just kind of, I like, my friends annoy me because I like to play different sides, right? So like if you're for, let's just say you believe in saved always saved, let's say I believe in that, but I'll still argue with them like I don't believe it, right? And so that
right,
kind of stuff where I'll play all the sides of arguments even though I don't believe it, I'll just sit in that seat, right? Just to
right,
challenge them and be like, you have to address this, because and the reason why is because in some of these situations I'm not comfortable saying I believe this about that, like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know,
yeah, yeah.
because if you say this then there's this. But anyways, that's one of the things where I feel like how much of the Orthodox Church, like I know traditions and the practices of Orthodoxy have stayed, but it's the man within Orthodoxy that has changed. I question that. And same with the Protestant Church. And the reason why is because, like you said, they didn't have social media, they didn't have all these distractions. It was like they were another breed of Christian, because we have so much stuff, like the level of consecration. I mean, when you read the early church fathers and the saints, the miracles that they were seeing were insane. Like, like they were just mind blowing, where you almost are
Yeah,
like, is this a myth? Is this just is this a parable? Like that's how I
yeah.
feel. I'm like, are these parables or real stories? So it's like, what has changed if the practice
I'll tell
of the
you.
expression? Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think what's changed is worldliness, and just more. There's certain people coming from the world into orthodoxy, and people bring baggage with them, and it's like the
Mhm.
organism of the Orthodox Church is always gonna stay unchanged, but the institution, there could be people that try to come in and try to bring worldliness with them, and it depends. You know, if a certain parish has a strong enough priest to rebuke certain aspects of worldliness, and that could be,
Yeah.
you know, parish to parish. And it's like, but I see orthodoxy as something that combats that. I see orthodoxy as that thread that's keeping the truth through all that worldliness. Like, I feel like if you take that, like if you take Christ and you take orthodoxy out of the picture, it all just totally falls apart, and there's
Mm.
nothing
Yeah.
really to combat it anymore, and it's just chaos. So I feel
Yeah.
like the orthodox the orthodox church isn't the problem, but it's the world, and it's the worldliness that starts bleeding into institutions through people. Because as much as, you know, like there's a quote from I don't know, I think it's St. John Chrysostom. He's like, if you came to the church to find holy people, you made a mistake. If you came to find God, you're correct.
Mm.
And it might be slightly
Yeah.
differently worded, but it's the same sentiment. And it's
Yeah.
and I think that's a powerful quote. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And that's the thing, is that I know it's just the worldliness in people and believers. Even people like me, like I know I really, am serious about pursuing God, and I've had, better seasons than others, and I've had more holier periods of times than others, and and I've had my ups and downs, obviously. I've had my falls, I've had my triumphs, but what I realize is that, at the end of the day, it's just this world is so there was a saint that I was heard that was quoted saying, the saints that come after us in this early couple first second century. He said that saints that come after us are going to be way better than us, or I don't know if he used the word better, but they're going to be stronger than us. They're going to be more filled with faith than us, because they are going to have to deal with harsher conditions of the world. And so it's like this
Right.
idea that, like, they didn't have cell phones with where you're not even trying to look at porn, and next thing you know, you see an advertisement of a twerking. They didn't have that. They probably had to go to a
Right.
specific area to see prostitutes or something, but it wasn't like you can't escape some of this stuff. Like, I go to work, can't escape the fact that my coworker wants to, hit his weed vape pen around me, and that they want to cuss and listen to, rap music while, like, you know what I'm
Right.
saying? So it's like, unless you genuinely become a monastic, which I would, but God gave me a family. If it
Right.
wasn't for giving me a family, probably I would probably just be a monastic. No, like, honestly.
Yeah.
But you get what I'm saying? So it's like the level of just crap in the world these days is so significant, where it's like you just are like, you get stuck in it unless you really go move to Mount Athos.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's very true. Very true. Did you, I guess we'll probably wrap it up.
You're
Did you
breaking
have
up, but
any
you're
like
lagging. It might be because my computer's
yeah,
die.
I think it is the battery. We'll wrap it up here. Let's see if you can hear me. If there's any final message you want to give to the people before we log off here. Is there like a final statement or anything you want to leave the people with?
Yeah, this will be my final statement. My final statement is Jesus is eternal life. Like, it is the person of Jesus that everything is. y- Uh, no, yeah, I see you now. You're good. Your audio is lagging. Yeah, it's pursue Christ. Like, that has been my passion, that I want people to understand, is don't get caught up in so many of the things that people get caught up in, so many of the distractions of the world, like, empty yourself that Christ can fill you, and don't worry about what the repercussions of following him. Like, there's times that Christ will literally lead you through terrible times. The nature of the cross, and that we're not living for ourselves. And so what I found is, if you're doing Christianity for yourself, or for what you can get from it, or what God can give you, you're going to be a miserable Christian. Like, the only way to do Christianity is to die to yourself, and to crucify the flesh and follow Christ not for your sake, but for His glory and for the sake of others. And because it's that's the only way that love overcomes, and the only way that suffering is fruitful. So that would be my ending statement. Follow Jesus, take it serious.
Glory be to God. Thank you so much, brother. I think we're breaking up a little on the audio here, but thank you so much for the final statement. And I'll definitely leave some of Joshua's information below if anybody wants to check out his channel. He's on Instagram, and I believe he's on YouTube as well. I'll leave some of the information down in the links below. And thank you so much, everybody, for watching. God bless you, everybody out there, and till next time. Thank you so much.